Good morning. This is Richard Thomas Writing Channel, episode 14. I know why the free bird sings. One of the things that I'm trying to do, it was actually the first purpose of these, it was the first purpose of, let me get that in here more. Okay. It was the first purpose of of doing this video project is actually I'm trying to learn how I write. So I'm not trying to learn how to write. I would have no interest in going to a school and saying, this is the way that you write. This is what's necessary. These are the forms. I'm not interested in those standards. I'm interested, God, I'm having my problems this morning with this thing. So I figure if I look at my writing, I have over 11 years of writing here. So if I look at my writing, I can get a better sense of how I write. Just what writing is to me, what's peculiar to me. So this is my own personal MFA program. I'm a master at being me, and I'm studying the fine arts of being me and writing, or however else I create, talking, whatever, as me. Okay, I wrote a letter to my friend this morning, and I'll just read this because this pretty much is a pretty good summation of where we are, at least on that particular point. How do I write? You know, and if you overhear this and you find anything useful to you, that's great, but it's not the intention. I'm really learning for my own purposes. So this is what I wrote. In this video project, I've gone through about 40 pages, single spaced, of past writing so far. I started with the last blog segments that I wrote after we moved to Nashville. There were 2 segments that I think are good. Everything else looks like notes. I've changed a lot in a year. I have different attitudes often now than I did then. In the notes, there are occasional good lines and underdeveloped good ideas. I enjoy listening to the talking around the reading on the videos. Last video, which was episode 13, I talked about the satisfaction-dissatisfaction paradox, my coinage. I'm always pleased when I look at my past writing, notes included, and also feel that I've changed. I always disagree with what I said in part. It's kind of like looking at old photo albums, chuckling at outdated clothes and hairstyles, but enjoying the memory. I've always had in my mind that the blog was some kind of big, hairy, rough draft. Even the good pieces are stretches of words reaching for something more. A gift and curse, maybe, is that I am in a constant state of change. I could look at my life like I look at the blog segments, not reinventions, metamorphosis. Personal memory is just one ingredient in the stew. My natural tendency is to write about many things and make connections. I feel free of all formal requirements. I make my own forms. I identify with painters more than writers in this regard. I'm oblivious to audience when I work now. It's all about pleasing myself. I've always been that way, but now I know it. I think I'm in some sort of pure artistic place at the moment. When a bird is singing It doesn't wonder how many people are listening or if they like it. That's how I feel now. After looking at all of these great artists of many kinds, what resonates most is that bird. I feel some reincarnated Buddhist or Taoist or I feel like some reincarnated Buddhist or Taoist or Native American master. I've read a little, etc., about all of them, but the identification is spooky. It comes from somewhere that was once outside of me and just appeared like magic. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. Well, now let's just get back to the manuscript of those blog pieces of the last year. Of last year, not the last year, like of a year ago. Okay, this was a letter to my friend that I wrote then. How I came to Chernow's book. Chernow, the author of the Grant biography. McKay's used bookstore is big. The books are inexpensive. The aisles are well organized. It's a secondhand Barnes and Noble. Serves my middlebrow tastes. I didn't embark on any study of contemporary lit there. I chose books that I might want to write about. Ron Chernow on Grant. Woody Allen's 2019 autobiography. 9 Stories by Salinger to revisit and follow up on our conversations. Any mind expansion will have to be ordered from Amazon. I now know why I was so indifferent to my Kindle. Those letters vibrating on a gray screen. Sigh. I walked through the store like I had never been in a bookstore before, and maybe I haven't. I wonder in ways that the unkind would find to be moronic, but that I know are profound. What's the difference between 9 stories and a limited series on a streaming service? Will Chernow give me more on the page than on a YouTube video from the 92nd Street Y? Does my lifelong interest in Woody Allen represent some kind of siren call of the mediocre in all of us? McKay's is not the Strand, the famous bookstore, used bookstore in New York. My friend's from New York. Nashville is not New York. I used to like going to the bookstores in New York and browsing, and then invariably a book would capture me. It would seem backlit on the shelf. It grabbed my attention like the girl in a crowded room that I was most attracted to. McKay's is ordinary. The Strand is adventure. New York, for me, not a general statement, was a time when I could be anything. Chicago was a time when I came to grips with who I am. Nashville is a time when I accept all of it. I bought the kids some books. I don't know what's new for children, so I picked some old reliables. Shel Silverstein was too pricey, so Dr. Seuss. For the older girl, I picked a book about a princess in the same way I'd pluck something for her off of the marquee at the multiplex. I'm feeling something like I'm feeling something like that Strand kind of pull to Grant. I think me and Grant, have similar stories. I was bored 2 days ago. Today, everything fascinates me. Well, I really like that. So that's another keeper. I've got those 2 pieces that I've talked about that I like, and I have this letter to my friend, which I really think is a nice piece of writing. I like it, and it's interesting. I think he brings out the best in me, and hopefully, I do the same thing for him. That's what we should do. But that's very nice. That talking about bookstores and I don't know. I don't know to what end that writing is, but I like it quite a bit, and haven't changed. The only thing I've changed in is that I'm sort of blowing the lead here. I lost interest in the big biography about Grant. Not that it wasn't a good book; it's a sensational book, but it's kind of like the introduction of the book really tells the story, and then it goes into great detail. So it's like about a 20-page essay with 1,000 pages of footnotes. And, there are certain details about when he was working in his father's, I don't know, I forget what kind of store it was, um, or blacksmith shop or whatever it was. There were details about that right before he became a general. I really, I'm really not that interested. But I was in that moment. So, um, the pull of that Grant book was important for me in the moment. So that's good. Now I have some asterisks making some sort of separation that I don't understand. I guess it must be an end of the letter. And predictably, initially, these sound like notes. I didn't embark on any study of contemporary lit there, maybe not contemporary, but I'm getting more of a sense of the essence of what it means for something to be literary while reading Chernow or on Grant and Twain. And I've lost interest on what it is to be literary. I'm kind of back to where I was when I started the blog, that I just described myself as a writer. And I said, I want to put everything in there. I want to put in memories, and I want to put in commentary, and I want to put in jokes, and I want to put in legal analysis, and I want to make different connections. And I really don't feel like being constrained by any notion of literary or whatever. The as I said in today's letter to my friend, I mean, my preoccupation is with the natural, just just what I naturally want to do. Um, Twain and Whitman and Chernow see the greatness of Grant. He was so maligned in other quarters. I was taught in school that he was one of our worst, if not the worst, president. If intelligent people admire you while superficial and ignorant people show you scorn, you are ahead of the game. Yeah, so that was definitely one point of identification I had with Grant. Whether it's true or not, it is true. I felt like during my life, I suffered a lot of unfair criticism. I think my father was always on my ass, and I don't regret it. Like Crap says on the tape when he's 39, and I'll say on my next tape here, I don't have any regrets. I think it's good. I think I learned a lot. But man, I've been with a lot of conservative people, a lot of criticism that's really stupid, and just their small mindedness. And it's just, it really the trial of my life. So I guess a lot of people have gone through a lot worse than that. I mean, I didn't live for decades in a South African prison like Nelson Mandela or something. But boy, I just had to navigate all this incoming shit from, uh, you know, these people. Grant could be awkward and unsure of himself in business and politics. I can relate. It is disorienting to be a fine person in the company of others who aren't even aware that it is possible to be fine or that fine people exist. The person of decency and genius is often cast as a fool or as a miscreant or even criminal. James Joyce wrote of Christ consciousness in literature and life It comes with the territory. Nice paragraph of a past thing. I mean, I'm so happy that that's not my life anymore. But yeah, that's an experience. Now, my friend would say, "Yeah, that's great, but it's really good when you're expressing it in a novel with the passage of time and characters and place, and it becomes more alive and more real for the reader or the viewer or whatever." And I agree with that, but I also like it for what it is. And this isn't something that I would revise. I think I think that's a great paragraph. I mean, it serves my purposes. I'm fine with it. Um, and I do in this piece provide those things. Or actually, what I was doing in the blog a lot was is that the movies or the books or whatever I was looking at or the individual in the news or whatever I was writing about, they provided the character, the time, the place, and I was relating my experience to theirs. So I use that to show what it was like. But that was definitely my experience. There's something that I like better than the novel in this type of paragraph because it it shows that I'm really not saying it to talk about my experience. I don't know why you would care about it. It's over. It doesn't matter. I'm fine. I I've even especially in the past year, I don't even think about it much. I mean, it's com it's completely gone. So what am I doing? I'm talking about some universal part of human experience because I don't think there's a person I know that hasn't been wounded by stupid and malicious people. And I'm sorry, I always faint to the politics. Right now, it's September the 10th. The presidential debate is tonight, maybe the first, maybe the only one. Kamala Harris is Douglas Trump, Donald Trump. Um, it's set in the polls. It's basically a tie race. So approximately half the country is for that asshole. I mean, apart from politics, it kind of shows us what we're dealing with. I think it is the best of times and the worst of times. I think I think there are more enlightened people today than there ever have been about all sorts of uh, issues. I mean, you talk about political issues, but personal issues too. But climate change and race relations, and you could go through the entire list of political issues, but also some that get into the psychological and even the spiritual, bullying and different forms of oppression and shaming and all these horrible behaviors that half the country apparently think are strong or will lead to some I don't know what kind of result they're looking for. I mean, they they want us to win and die in the process. I mean, I don't- I you know I find it very hard to understand. So that's the way it is. And I mentioned this quote from Pope John Paul II. He said it at a certain point. He said the church won't be necessary because the consciousness of people will be so high that these are in Catholic terms now. So listen to them as metaphors because that's how I'm offering them to you. that everyone would be participating in the mystical body of Christ, and then there would be no need for churches anymore to lead people to spirituality and to ethical and moral behavior. And I look at the Pope as a writer, not as an authority on anything. Certainly not an authority of my soul. But but that makes a big impression on me. Eventually, the everything that Trump is and represents, and that people project on him, it's all dying. Another quote from a spiritual and political leader, Martin Luther King Jr. It said the arc of the moral universe curves towards justice. That might not be the exact quote, but that's the idea. Um, that's true. I think back in the 70s, there is a benefit in age. That I remember when Shirley Chisholm ran for president, and everybody thought, this black woman, a black woman's not president. And Trump is still trying to make that argument. Never be strong enough. And not only that, it's like, it's not who can do the job. It's like, who do they want in the country club? So there's always this tension between, well, Lincoln talked about it at the time of the Civil War, to go towards the better angels of our nature. So there's always it's like, it's kind of a very interesting moment, because this really is like a comparison in the country between good and evil. And uh that was a moment that that Grant was at. And he went from really being a complete failure, like selling firewood in the streets of Ohio, after he kind of crapped out of the army the first time, and people looking at him as a real failure. And I had that in my life too. And then he ended up eventually being the winning general in the Civil War, a US president, touring Europe, and writing, as his final moment, writing an autobiography of great quality. And I don't, of course, I don't identify with that in terms of the size of his performance on the world stage, but I do identify with that as my story. I mean, as a story about me. I mean, that's what happened to me too, in a much more minor key. But that happened to me. So talking about Grant, and then writing these paragraphs about, you know, him being decency and genius cast as a fool and everything. So I talk about Grant, but I talk about myself too. And then I'm talking about you, if you're listening, and the world in general. And I like that. I don't think this kind of writing is in any way inferior to a novel or a memoir, where I'm using personal memory instead of what I see in the outside world. I see myself in the outside world. So this is a big part of the way that I write. Not that I also wouldn't write memory or fiction or memoir fiction or anything, but I see this as part of the way that I write. It's writing that I'm looking at now. And I'm liking a lot of these paragraphs. I think with this Grant piece, There are certain paragraphs, there's certain sentences that I would just lop out. But so far with this, I'm seeing sentences that I like. And they express what I feel today. This is not a change that has happened since a year ago. The only thing that's changed in the year is the intensity of feeling. I think I was coming from a place of more woundedness in September of 2023 than I am now. I think a lot of wounds healed. I think simply by moving to Nashville, it's just it's just a major change. It could have been anywhere. It could have been anywhere. And it's not like after the pandemic and and then the after it's not like when I was in Chicago, I was going out and associating with a lot of people or anything. But there's kind of a spiritual thing that happened that we moved down here. You know, somehow I moved to a greater level of independence. Listen, there's a lot of things I like about Nashville. I I really love my stepdaughters and their families, the children and their husbands and everything. I love them. I love being part of this blended family. I love the life down here. I really love the nature of, if I go get uh, a jug of milk at a supermarket, I get to drive through like forest. I mean, it's really beautiful down here in that way. And it's a little patch of blue within Tennessee, but you know, but there's things I don't like. I don't like the fact that Tennessee has what was it, one out of five black people can't vote in Tennessee because they have criminal records, and that's the most in the nation. They had the state legislature after there was a shooting at a Christian grade school. It was a very famous situation, and a woman and two black representatives in the state legislature tried to speak about gun regulation and everything, and they told them to shut up. They passed rules so they couldn't talk. Uh, I was, we've got this like little development that we're in here has a little pool, which I've been going to more because the kids like to go swimming in it. And I was talking to some guy there, and he started. Our first conversation was about how he didn't like Trump. So, in maybe the third conversation, I mentioned that I thought most rich people are crazy, and talked about RFK Jr. Picking up roadkill, a bear, a whale. He thinks he's going to eat it, and then you eat a lot of roadkill. Apparently, you get a worm in your brain. Maybe that happens, but that basically how disconnected. JD Vance is speaking for how crazy that stuff is, and all of a sudden he changed. This guy, um, in his he said, well, I know a guy who's a billionaire, because the way I framed it was, I said, not people that have enough. I mean, I didn't want to offend him or me. I'm not talking about, you know, having a comfortable life. I was talking about, like, billionaires. And he said, well, I know a billionaire that he sold, he was the chairman of the board of a big pharma company, and he wanted to profit share with the workers in the company, and the board didn't want to do it, and they didn't pass it, so he resigned. And he was bringing this up as like that this guy did some wonderful thing. Well, I didn't tell the guy this, so he was basically he was telling me to be quiet, because you're supposed to genuflect to rich people. And I didn't say anything, and I might never say anything to him again, but that idea, it's like when I had no money and I had jobs as a lawyer. I was working for one insurance coverage firm. They wanted me to screw widows and orphans out of their insurance money, and I quit. When I was at the disciplinary commission, they wanted me to punish a lawyer who wasn't practicing, who had an outburst in court about a personal matter, something about her father's, they had renters or something. I don't know, but it was not like she was representing anybody or really practicing law. And she had an outburst with the judge, and he wanted me to punish her. And then, this might sound small, but I don't think it is. He told me, do this, and this, and I'm going to give you a raise. And he didn't give it to me. And I thought, like, this is the ethics commission. You gave your word. I did it. You're welching on a deal. What kind of ethics is this? He had a stream of people that would pass my office, and I was just being punished because I was different. And I was doing my job and everything, and it was just seen as insubordination. And I think this is the type of thing that Grant went through too. So, you know, what is this bullshit? So I left that job for good reason. The guy who was the chairman of the board made hundreds of millions of dollars in big pharma, and then he left with that money. So what's the big fucking deal about that? And then the guy tells me, oh, there's another woman at the pool, said she's a Republican, and you really shouldn't say anything. And this idea, and this happened in Chicago too, where, oh, don't talk about religion and politics. You can't challenge what their ideas are. They act out and speak all their ideas, but their expectation is that you're supposed to keep your mouth shut, because they're in their mind, they're the boss, they're in charge, and know your place. And I never accepted that. And Grant didn't either. So I saw that as a comparison between me and Grant. Is something that we shared. I mean, my feelings, oh, don't discuss it, or that offends us, or their ego that don't challenge what we believe. We heard this in church or whatever. Hey, I need my Social Security. I need my Medicare. My step grandkids, they need the child tax credit. Okay. I got to worry when they go to school that they're going to be shot or something. They have to do drills to protect themselves because their policy is that there's nothing you can do with like a troubled 14-year-old boy getting his hands on a gun. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that this idea that you can't say anything because they're in a stronger position. Why? Because they say so. And they're great at manipulating things to have it that way. Like the Electoral College. That's a remnant of slavery. This election, as everybody knows, and that people talk about, they always want the upper hand. It's always a process argument. They always leverage things to be in charge. And they shame us, and then they put power on their own backs and money in their pockets. This is this is what they're doing. And I think one of the biggest scams that they're doing in the election is abortion, because that issue, because if they want more regulation related to abortion, which, by the way, they have no right to want. They can believe whatever they want about abortion. They have no right to tell other people how to live their lives or what to do. They don't have any right to tell people, they have an abstract philosophical idea, life starts now. So, based on that, but it's really an opportunity for them to put their boot on people's necks. And but even given that they really want something, they already have it. They can be against abortion. They can believe it. They can make that personal choice in their life. They can go to a church that says don't have an abortion. Nobody's stopping them. Why are they forcing it on other people? Well, they say, oh, well, we're saving the children or whatever. Well, but they don't, that's their abstract belief. It's not real. But even if they wanted to do that and accomplish that, and even if they wanted to convince, but they don't want to convince, they want to dictate. If they wanted to convince the country, we should regulate abortion. You don't do it by jamming judges on the Supreme Court and then having this ill-informed, unprepared opinion, not talking to anybody, not talking about any of the problems associated with this very complex issue, not doing a thing, as a matter of fact, being against anything that's for the good of children and for the good of families, because you want to grab all the money. I mean, they're really, really ridiculous. So the idea, nobody's perfect. And I'm not saying like the Democrats I know they're politicians. I know they have personal ambition. I know money's involved. I know that they would have scandals or whatever, but this still maps out as good versus evil. That's really the way that I see it. And that's the way I see the election. And that's the way I saw, what I just described, it happened at those law firms. The jobs that I had to leave. And then one more thing on that. One of the things too, at that attorney disciplinary commission, the director is telling me about this ethical quandary, that there were two lawyers and they had attorney-client privilege with their client. They were criminal defense attorneys, and their client was in jail. And he admitted that he had murdered somebody, and there was an innocent man languishing in jail because of his lie. Now, according to the code of ethics, these attorneys couldn't say anything because they have to maintain confidentiality with their client. Well, I'll tell you what I would have done and they didn't. And then finally, years later, there was like DNA evidence or something. This guy got out of jail after he rotted there for 19 years or something. It's ridiculous. And he's like, well, what do you do? It's a quandary. And you stop being a fucking lawyer. You know that somebody is in jail that doesn't deserve to be there, and you ruin his life in order to preserve your fucking law license? Go do another job. I mean, it's, some of this stuff to me, anyway, that was the trifecta in that job. I couldn't respect what this guy was saying about this case where these defense attorneys knew that their client murdered somebody and another guy was paying the price. I couldn't I couldn't put up with him with this guy saying that go after punish a schizophrenic, punish this woman for being sick, go punish her. And I couldn't put up with the fact that you said you were going to pay me some fucking money. I did the work that you wanted me to do. Pay me the fucking money. It's not even about the money. It's not about the money. The point was that it's disrespectful. It's an assertion of power, which is all these conservative assholes do. It's an assertion of power. I can pay you whatever I want. What difference does it make what I told you? You're nothing. You need me. You're lucky that you're here. Just shut up and not worry about it. Fuck you. The culture of the legal profession in Chicago in that way was a joke, because that is not the culture that's not a culture that lawyers should be participating in. All these hierarchies and everything. That's a lot of bullshit. The law is it's about people's rights, and it's about working things out, and going to third parties to settle disputes, and not my way or the highway. That's not the law. How many more paragraphs do we have here? I'm just going to go to the bottom of this page. Grant, contrary to popular belief, hated war. He had the soul of anything but a butcher. Grant, however, did what was necessary. There are no decisions in life. We ultimately do what we must do. Grant, a sensitive and poetic man, faced grim things like armed insurrection and cancer, and saved his country and his family. His example, like the examples of all great people, saved mankind. That's a great paragraph. That's what I believe. That's what I think I'm doing, actually. I know you might say, God, that's quite an ego to say that you're a great person. I think I am. I mean, even if nobody listens to this, that's not the point. Just by being who you are, living from the higher, but the thing about the higher angels in nature, I tell you the truth, I never was much interested in the lower angels. So, I've mentioned maybe one thing that I did that I think was really bad, but I honestly don't think I did that much that was bad. But anyway, and neither did Grant. I mean, I don't include mistakes that you make, misunderstandings, things that you do when you're learning something that somebody might get hurt or whatever. I'm not saying that I never did anything that hurt anybody. I did plenty of that stuff, but it was always in the spirit of learning and becoming something, becoming something more, not more, to becoming what the thing is. So I'm in a stretch where I like these paragraphs. Grant was so much more than Patton, who was useful and needed at the time, but not transcendent, because his animating concern was his own glory. I can see the influences, and to talk about influences, for example, you go into an MFA program and they say, okay, these are the short stories of Raymond Carver, and read these because you're going to see this approach to writing these stories, and this will be informative. I think the influences, when they really have power, are natural. They're not they get into your bloodstream, and then they come up through your unconscious into your consciousness. And this sentence, which I like a lot, Grant was so much more than Patton, who was useful and neat at the time, but not transcended because his animating concern was his own glory. When I was in high school, um, I think it was either A Man for All Seasons or Murder in the Cathedral. One of those uh, Henry VIII plays. I think Murder in the Cathedral is Henry VIII. Anyway, the but I remember something that was said in those high school English classes. Said doing the right thing for the wrong reason. It's important why you do something because because that's really what Jesus. That's really what changes things. Um, Chernow makes clear early that one of his great objectives is to defend his subject with his book. I have the same goal for my book. Grant's critics of his military and his political careers are primarily engaged in justifying themselves. This is my conclusion. Chernow's analysis is more nuanced, I imagine, but I'll be surprised if he doesn't fundamentally agree. Look, I'm liking this Grant stuff. I'm liking the Grant stuff. So it's interesting. Now I'm at the beginning of page 42 in this manuscript, and there's some stuff that's definitely keepers. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, but I'll see you next time. And now my mind is going to shift towards watching. Well, I got hours, so I might do something else in the meantime. But watching the presidential debate tonight. Okay, next time.